We are here with Sarah Paige from Art Risk. She is
Hi.
the Chief Operating Officer, and she is coming to talk to us all about insurance for surrogacy.
Yes, I'm very excited to be here.
So when we were talking before we started recording, it seems like got interested in insurance in a similar way. So having to look at insurance to figure out if it was a suitable insurance or not. So for me, being the medical person in my family, I would be tasked with looking at the 2 or 3 different employer insurance plans and trying to pick between the HMO and the PPO and the high deductible and the low deductible plan, and then trying to figure out which one would cover fertility services and to what extent. And Sarah, you're saying that you initially did not like insurance for that reason?
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't like it. My background is education, and every time they came up with the different plans that you had to choose and the deductibles, and I honestly would call my parents and say, can you just pick this for me, because I didn't want to really deal with it, and at the time didn't really use insurance that much, so I felt, I think like a lot of people unfortunately do. I mean, I'm on the flip side now, so I see the importance of it, but originally I was like, what is the purpose of this? I'm not going to need it. It's an expense out of my pocket. Just pick something that's going to be okay. But yeah, I felt it unnecessary evil to have at the time. And I did not like it or want to deal with it in any capacity.
Okay. And then at some point in time, you fell in love with insurance and said that you want to spend more than a decade of your life focusing on insurance for people going through surrogacy, fertility treatments, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I kind of fell into the job. I took a job at Art Risk, working 10 hours a week. I was just reviewing policies at the time, calling insurance carriers. There really wasn't a full-time position. I was in between jobs at the time, and it ended up growing. I ended up liking it a lot. We were kind of on the ground floor of creating things, policies, and the Affordable Care Act was coming up and was in Congress at the time and trying to get passed. This was back in 2009 before it was enacted in 2010. So there was a lot that was going on and shifting and changing. And I have the way my brain works, I like to figure out puzzles and put them together. And so for me, it was an ever changing, ever evolving field. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I don't like to do anything stand still. I'm kind of that person that, if I'm watching something on TV, I'm also probably reading something or doing research on something. So for me, it was a really nice way to transition just into insurance, and then fell in love with the art realm, and not necessarily on the client side. I honestly fell in love with the professional side and the advocacy and the love and the care that the professionals take, whether it's an agency owner, a doctor, an attorney, escrow, how much everyone gave and cared about building these families. And it was so inspiring. And so it was a love that evolved. I can tell you that. It wasn't like, oh, I love this right off the bat. It was something that definitely evolved over time. And it's so funny when I talk about it and everyone's like, you have a lot of passion around this. I'm like, I do. I never thought I would, but I honestly, I really do. So that's where I fell in love with it slowly, but I definitely, the long lasting love, which is good.
Interesting. So you can hear the passion that you have for art insurance, but I wonder, is it something that one needs to specialize in, or can any insurance broker sell plans for people looking to do like egg donation or surrogacy?
Yeah, kind of like with an attorney or a doctor, such as yourself, you want someone that's specialized in it. You want someone that understands the policy language, that understands how different carriers react to gestational carriers coming in the door. Even if language is good, sometimes the carriers aren't friendly. So yes, I think specializing in it definitely helps. There's also very specific policies that only people who are specialized in it will be able to sell to kind of anyone going through the journey, whether it's a donor, gestational carrier, or intended parent. So you always want to hook up with someone who has that ART background and understands the journey aspect to be able to cover the risks, and then also offer the correct policies that you're going to need throughout the journey. Again, from kind of the donor aspect through the inception, through delivery, and even into the newborn aspect.
Okay. So it sounds like there are different types of insurance that one can use around a surrogacy journey.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types. And we kind of break it down by stages. So we have it where we originally start with the donor. We get donor insurance, which is technically cycle insurance to cover any complications on that side. We have recipient insurance, which will cover the transfer procedure. We, of course, have maternity. That's the big one. We want to make sure everyone has that maternity insurance. There's life insurance, because every contract is going to require that gestational carrier to carry life insurance on herself should anything happen. You'll have loss of reproductive organs, because that is a legitimate thing that can happen. And we've had to pay out on policies. I would say, it's low, but it's at least 6% of the, of journeys throughout the year will probably pay some form of a loss of reproductive organ fee out. There's permanent and total disability. There are legitimate risks that come with being pregnant and going through this journey. And so we're going to have insurance that covers those risks. And we also look at the contract side of things to make sure that we're covering what the intended parent is contractually required to cover. From there, then we'll look at the newborn side, which of course the intended parent is fully responsible for, but we always touch upon it because we want to make sure that they're setting themselves up for the best possible outcome as well, because newborn and NICU bills can be devastating if you don't have the right insurance in play.
Absolutely. Okay. So given all the different types of insurance that one could use and should use regarding a surrogacy journey, let's focus primarily on the health insurance for the surrogate, for the gestational carrier. Now, some of us have like really, really good insurance coverage for fertility. So I lived in 2 different states which have fertility mandates that cover IVF. So let's say I'm living in Maryland and I have fertility coverage because it's mandated by the state. Should I expect my insurance to cover my gestational carrier's health expenses?
Yeah, I love this question because I think a lot of people do. There's a little bit of an expectation on that of like, well, if I can't and I have fertility coverage and this is part of the fertility process, then I should be able to cover her. And
if honestly, I can't get pregnant, and that's like my disease, which is infertility.
Exactly.
Covered. But why is it not covered?
I know it should be. It should be. There's only a couple carriers that do, and they're usually on self-funded plans through very specific companies. It's not because she's not your dependent. And so if you look at insurance law, the insurance law and who you can add to a policy will typically go back to the state tax code. And so in order to add someone to your policy, you have to basically be able to file that they are part of your household, which is why they're not typically added into insurance policies unless they want to. But then again, those are the self-funded plans that don't necessarily have to follow all of your tax code laws or insurance laws within the state. They only have to follow federal law. So it's a little different. So that's why we don't see gestational carriers being able to get insurance through that. And it really has to go again back to how the Department of Insurance is set up in conjunction with the tax code and tax law within that state.
Okay, so then who needs the insurance?
The gestational carrier. At that point in time,
she's the insurance. Okay.
Yeah, she's going to need the insurance. And so what we would do is wherever she is domiciled is the state where we need to procure the insurance, where we have to get it. And we will go through.
Domiciled is where she lives.
Where she lives, yes. So wherever she is residing for more than 180 days of the year, that's where we're going to have to get her insurance. And so when we do that, we have to look at all the different language within all the different policies that are out there and different insurance carriers. We vet them ahead of time, and then we enroll her in a plan that, of course, it's what we call surrogate friendly. And we know the language is good. The carriers are friendly towards gestational carriers. There's a good network involved with it. So we really try and kind of break it down and say what kind of coverage and access is she going to need during that journey, during that pregnancy? And let's find carriers that are going to be able to cover and be, again, kind of the easiest to work with during that journey. And then we'll get her insurance. The insurance is in her name, so we always will have them on the phone with us. They ask us questions. And then the intended parent typically manages the bills on that end and make sure that everything is paid for. That's typically a contractual responsibility for the intended parent. And the gestational carrier will use the insurance, and it should be fine and dandy. Not that there won't be bumps in the road, because it's insurance, and it will happen. It will happen. But then we'll, on our side, we'll always be the person, the advocate, the company that's going to, if there is a bump in the road, be there to sort the bump out, get it all cleared away. And that way you can continue on and not be stressed out.
So you mentioned surrogate friendly insurance. So that is a type of insurance that one is allowed to use for surrogacy.
Yes. And they don't have to be surrogate specific. So it can be an Affordable Care Act plan. There are some plans on the Affordable Care Act, kind of your insurance on an individual market that will work, and they're very friendly. And then there's also surrogate specific insurance on the open market or the ACA market. That's why we vet it, because not every plan is, and language will vary between plans. Some may be what we call ambiguous, meaning that there's not a clear definition on surrogacy. Some will be very clear that they love it and it's fantastic and don't worry about it. Some will be very clear that they don't want it and that it's excluded from the policy. Others will carry what we call a lien, which may ask the intended parent to reimburse the insurance company for any expenses that they paid on behalf of the gestational carrier. So it's all over the board. So this is why, kind of going back to one of the questions you asked earlier, was why do you need an ART specific, insurance agent? This is why, because it's not cookie cutter in any capacity, and it doesn't remain cookie cutter year to year either. So every year we have to revet every single insurance plan to make sure it's going to be safe that following year.
Okay. Well, I saw a question online, and I'd love to get your take on it. So I'll read it to you. My gestational carrier's insurance is going to end next month, and her new employer plan has a surrogacy exclusion. She should be pregnant by then, though, and I'm wondering, how would her insurance even know it's a surrogate pregnancy? Basically, what could go wrong if we just continue on using the same insurance?
Yeah. So what ends up happening, there's codes. There's CPT codes and Z30, which is basically how the insurance company knows what to cover or not cover. And it's a bill that comes in from the doctor's office, and it says, hey, this is the service, and it gets submitted. And there's CPT codes and ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes. And again, that's going to financially say, this is what the service is, this is how much it is. And on the insurance side, it goes covered or uncovered, and it's one of the two. And there is a specific code for surrogacy, and it's Z33.3, and it says surrogate pregnancy. And for that, any doctor, any facility can put that code into the medical bill that's submitted to the insurance company, and then the insurance company would know that that's a surrogate pregnancy. The other reason too, and the other way that they can know, is that if there are claims or there's a complication or something happens, they will typically request medical records to review to make sure they're paying for everything they should be paying for on the insurance side. And when they get those medical records, it very clearly states, and I have not seen a medical record file that doesn't state that they are a gestational carrier, because the facilities need to know ultimately, again, who's financially responsible, whose baby it's going to be. There's birth orders involved. So it's very clearly stated within that. So those are the different ways that they would know. There's always concern about not telling an insurance company and just trying to what we call ride it out and see what happens. I'm not a good write it out person. Obviously I'm in insurance. So I mean, I'm like, no, let's cover every single risk. I'm the person who has like the crazy insurance on their home, even though I probably don't need it. But ultimately it's really just to make sure that you are protected as the intended parent. because whatever happens to the gestational carrier, you have a contract that says, I'm going to cover everything, and it does not go back to her. So it's to ensure that there are no surprises. It's to ensure that you have a cap on your financial exposure. So when we look at things and people ask, well, can I just keep it and then we'll see what happens, or we'll wait a couple months and get new insurance later, and we'll just have this period and we'll see what kind of bills they cover. That always makes me nervous, because again, you don't know what's going to happen during a pregnancy and nobody can predict it at all. And we know that they're screened, which is wonderful, and that the gestational carriers are of great shape and health. And we understand that. That doesn't mean that a complication could not occur. There's less risk, right? We're trying to set up for everybody up for the least risk possible, but it's life and people and bodies and medicine. There's no guarantees. So we want to make sure everyone's set up in case of anything.
So it can be found out because of the different codes that are used. So the specific ICD-10 code.
Yep.
And then when they're reviewing like progress notes, H&Ps, C-section note, medical student, resident, anybody.
Yeah, anybody.
Noted that this was a surrogate or a gestational carrier.
Yeah.
And then to speak on the amount that you could pay in terms of health bills, it could be really, really high, right? So for me, I had a catastrophic delivery. It was a cesarean hysterectomy. It was in the ICU. It was in the hospital for 14 days entirely. The actual bill that went from my hospital to my insurance was about $300,000. Just from that one, pregnancy complication. So I can't imagine receiving a bill like that after a surrogacy pregnancy.
Yes. And that's where it's what's scary, right? Because we do see those bills. We place around 3,000 policies a year. We do claims management on things. So we do see these bills come in. And I try and tell everyone, if it's, when you're healthy, it's not expensive. And that's typically with everything, right? You can go into the doctor's office, you could get cash rates for 3,000 for the OB, you could get a delivery for 10, you could be all in at 13,000 and call it a day. And it's beautiful and fantastic, right? That's not what happens when there's a complication. And it can be a tiny one. It doesn't need to be large. It could be that after delivering, she's lost a little too much blood and they need to do a couple blood transfusions. It could be that she has gestational diabetes, and so she has to be monitored extra closely and have a couple extra fetal echocardiograms. There could be all over the board. As soon as you start to add that in there, your pregnancy, which would normally range usually between the 18 to 22 mark, that's a pretty average standard cost of a pregnancy, with no complications, vaginal delivery, that's going to go well into that $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 range. And then, like you said, if there's anything having to do with hysterectomy, ICU, oh my goodness, specialists involved, like, as you said, 300,000. And honestly, Liz, I was shocked that you said 300. I thought you were going to say like 500 or 700,000, like it's expensive. And so gets a little terrifying when you hear things like, oh, I'm just going to cash pay. I have great rates from the doctor. I have great rates from the hospital.
Exactly.
We all have great rates until something happens, right? And again, we don't hope for anything to happen. That's why they're screened heavily. It's why there's guidelines from ASRM, which is American Society of Reproductive Medicine. I get it, but that doesn't guarantee. And so the purpose of insurance is for what you don't know. It's all the unknowns that you don't have foresight for, that you just want to make sure you're secure and okay.
So I think we made a pretty good case for having a surrogacy-friendly insurance.